Dear participants of the Gaidar Forum, we give you a big welcome to our session, which is a session on a very important part of health system. I am speaking about the medicine provision. It's a complex process, and we understand that it begins from the development and production of medication, includes control of medications and their efficiency, their quality, state guarantees. Speaking about the Russian Federations, because accessible medication is a cheap medication of high quality, and a very important aspect of medicine provision is the our new breakthrough medicines which contribute to change the life of patients, which give them the possibility to survive. And those are drugs which are used by millions of citizens of our citizens. Those are the issues which we will discuss today. And I would like to present you the participants of our discussions. Sergey Glagolev, Vice Minister of Health of Russian Federation. Alla Samoylova, Chief of the Federal Service for Control in Health Sphere. Welcome. And Asgar Rangoonwala, Managing Director of Development Market of EMEA and Africa, Janssen, Department of Pharmaceutical Enterprise, Johnson & Johnson. Welcome. And my name is Yuriy Zhulev. I'm the moderator of this session. I'm the co-president of the Russian Union of Patients, and I think that our meeting of today has great participation. We have here patients, we have here the regulating body, and the producer of vital importance medication. We have few time, so I will ask everybody to observe the time. You have 7 minutes, so we will have time for questions and answers. And the first questions I have is to Sergey. So we understand that the current task which has the government and the Ministry of Health is the fight against the pandemic and the post-pandemic period. We also have to follow all the national priorities and national projects in the health field, and it's a very difficult task. And one of the important elements is the breakthrough technologies and new medication. We see that it's something which has a great demand, and there is great attention to this issue. And the authorities of our country, they follow this issue. And we know that the Ministry of Health also pays great attention to this topic. So the question is where there are some barriers on the way of new medications, which ways of overcoming those barriers you see. Which is your opinion about the politics in this field? Dear Yuriy, dear colleagues, in the first place, I would like to say that the last 2 years, they changed completely our approaches and the principle of regulation of medication market. We've changed our perceptions of the regulation procedure, which was based on the classical model of clinical studies of 3 stages, and no regulatory body in the world had a different approach in the world 2 years ago. So I'm proud because our country could adapt fastly to the changes in the regulatory landscape. We managed to modify our mechanism of authorization of access to the market, and we created on this space of ex-USSR a new model of registration which allows us to have in 1 year new medications for all the needs that we have due to the coronavirus. I'm speaking about vaccines, about the drugs which are used to fight against the cytokine storm. And we managed to do it thanks to new regulations, new studies post-authorization. And also, on the other hand, we managed to do it thanks to big data and information about the use of those drugs. We have new unique system for all the states in the health field, which includes the registration of the vaccinated persons, of persons who had coronavirus. We also have some applications which allows all the patients to inform us about their condition, and it's very important because it allows us to evaluate their health. And now we have to integrate all those mechanisms in the waste space of Eurasian Economic Union. We cooperate with our colleague on the registration of new medications from the beginning of the last year, and we have serious advances here, and that guarantees an earlier access of new advanced medication to the market, and we also can adapt these new medications to other medications. We also have a new procedure for the authorizations in exceptional circumstances when a priori we don't have time to evaluate this or that medications due to lack of time and lack of points for validation of the drug. It's not a complete authorization. We are basing on a new decree on COVID, and we are applying those norms to a wider market of medications. And we offer new digital instruments complementing those bases. And we also use our practical experiences, and we hope that this way we will guarantee a faster access of innovation medications to our market. And we are now on the edge of registering of new gene drugs in our market, and we see that there are some differences between the legislation on biotechnological medication and on the advanced therapies of the Eurasian Economic Union. So the main task for us for this year is to harmonize our approaches within the Eurasian Economic Union to apply the same principles of control and of authorization for all those drugs. And we can differentiate between the drugs which are registered at the level of Eurasian Economic Union and within the Russian Federation. I'm speaking about cell-based therapy drugs and drugs of this kind, and also speaking about the access to the market through the Eurasian Economic Union mechanisms. I would like to mention also the necessity of formalizing of the fast-track institution. We have all the elements we need. We can evaluate the advantages, therapeutic advantages of this or that drug, and we can create conditions for their study and evaluation in fast process to guarantee their access to the market. And also we have to work on the digitalization of the health service. We have this process going on right now, including the distance trade. We can control through the big data the use of drugs on clinical level, and it requires a lot of work on legal framework, on ethical aspects, on the access to the data of the patients. We have to guarantee the medical confidentiality. That's basically my vision of the development of the accessibility of new drugs, innovation drugs in Russia. Sergey, I hope that we will have to ask you more questions, but I would like to comment that as a representative of patients, I totally agree with you. It's a very important line of future development of the system, because all the doctors, all the patients, they wait for for new drugs, cell-based therapy, gene therapy. We want those medications come to our country because they are of vital importance, and we also have a new platform which also contributes to the early access of those drugs for orphan diseases like good circle, and we have now the possibility of centralized purchase by the state of the non-registered drugs. I'm not speaking as an expert, that's my personal point of view, but there are many people who share this point of view, and this foundation can help us to work on certain models of purchases, of negotiations with companies. So I think that we have plenty of possibilities. And also I would like to say that we are very preoccupied by the harmonization within the territory of Eurasian Economic Union, and also within the cooperation with FDA and AMI. And we follow your work, and we thank you personally and the Ministry of Health, because we see that you understand the problems that we have right now, and that you are working on fighting them. So I would like now to give the floor to Alla. Welcome again. The electronic system of monitoring of medications. There were plenty of discussions. There were some issues which had to do with implementation. The Union of Patients, which I am representing, also participated in this process. We supported the development of that system, and also monitored the criticism. And now we see that this system is working. I would like to ask you one question, which has to do with actual situation. Did the system work during the pandemic, and it helped or not?
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, and Yuriy Alexandrovich. Well, in fact, the system of MDLP helped us a lot in terms of monitoring the pharmaceutical benefits and the provision of medicines, not only in the Russian Federation, but we are capable of monitoring the availability of medications in every medical institution, or even in every drugstore. We know that MDLP system has started in reality in 2020 during the pandemic, in July 2020, to be more precise. That was just the beginning of COVID-19 pandemic. There were problems related to registration, delivery, and importation of drugs, as not everyone was ready for the labeling system and so on and so forth. But we managed to make it workable, the whole system, and today I can say that we registered 91,000 organizations that participate in this system of medicinal provisional. 191,000 of different places where they perform their activities, both medical organizations, wholesale, retail organizations. I mean that we have registered to date 37,000 titles of medications. So in fact, we have no drugs on the market without label. So let me repeat once again that that's a good possibility to monitor the availability of these drugs for the subjects in every constituent subject of the Russian Federation. During the pandemic, when we had to deal with these issues urgently, I mean the provision of drugs, especially for those who had coronavirus infection, we could say in reality in which place exactly we need to deliver medicines and where they lack such medicines. Today, we make labels on every vaccine which are in circulation, and we can monitor not only the availability of vaccines at every medical institution, but we can also monitor the service, the lifetime of every vaccine, which is also important to ensure quality drugs for our patients. Just summing this up, I would like to say that the label insisting, despite the fact that at the very start there were certain, doubts about this, it still helped us a lot, especially during the COVID-19 period, because in reality we know quite well what exactly and where they are needed. Thank you, Alla Vladimirovna. Just wanted to say what Sergey Vladimirovich mentioned, that the pandemic demonstrated the need for electronic services in the healthcare systems. We're talking about the, the drug provisions, the monitoring of pharmaceutical products in terms of forecasting the supplies and the streamlining the state system in this area. And also quality control is highly important, because it's much easier to reveal a certain series of products that are taken from the turnover. I would like to say thanks and would like to congratulate you, because I know precisely that Roszdravnadzor, our health care service organization, and when Mikhail Murashka was setting up the system, shows its efficiency, which is quite justified. So we know that the electronic healthcare systems are now facing a kind of dispersion, because they are, you mentioned a lot of medical organizations, the structures that have been connected to them. We understand quite well that they're not owned by Roszdravnadzor or the Ministry of Healthcare. They are mainly, they are owned by the constituent subjects of the Russian Federation. So let's speak frankly, that may probably provoke a debate. It concerns not only the system we are talking about, but in many respects, that is about the initiatives of the federal authority that are impeded by implementation of this on the level of different subjects, because that's a question of concerted action and the regulatory acts and regulations, and of course the financial aspects are quite important, because subjects, constituent subjects, are not always ready to allocate funds that are needed to provide electronic services. So they are quite serious means. Alla Vladimirovna, just a clarifying question. What about the patient? What is your take on this? We know applications. What about the role of the patient? How is he supposed or she supposed to get information? Let's talk about the end consumer, because it's not only medical organization, but the patient itself that we're talking about. Of course, a patient can get information, first of all, about the place of origin and the manufacturing of this drug, and then he can follow the entire supply chain and to see how it gets into the market. So this system of monitoring allowed us over the last 2 years to reveal the repeated deliveries of such drugs in the pharmaceutical network for some medications that were already delivered to some medical institutions. So if a patient buys a drug like this, he can see that this particular medication has probably gone through a wrong supply chain. So there might be suspicions that this kind of drug has been reintroduced. We're not talking about whether it's quality or not quality, but it's just a reintroduced sale. So the patient himself can trace down down the whole chain today. Apart from that, we have also introduced the so-called remote sale of medications. You can buy them in internet by shops online. So when a patient buys this and comes home, so he can use the application which is called Honest Sign. He can trace down where its origin and how it actually ended up. Yes, I think it's quite a serious option. I remember the first group of goods that we had, the fur coats, but we're not talking about fur coats right now, so we're talking about the products that are life-saving drugs, and they're really important, so regarding importation and sale of such things in pharmacies. So the brief comments, how do you rely on electronic services in healthcare in your ministry in general? I'm talking about prescriptions, monitoring their movement. Do you think that they play a big role in this area? So I think this is one of the fundamental elements that we rely upon in the process of development. On the one hand, in regulations that I've talked about, and also in the area of control over pricing policies and quality medical assistance, especially within the framework of medical recommendations, which have become a must necessary, and the use of drugs themselves. So here we are talking about forecasting the actual demand, especially talking about niche drugs and other products. So the role of electronic resources is of prime importance here. Apart from that, I would like to know that the electronic services, electronic prescriptions, and the use of data sets for patients also play an important role in the pharmaceutical benefits schemes in these programs in many regions, in many constituent subregions of the Russian Federation. So I think the key challenge that we are facing right now is ensuring standards and ensuring exchange, mutual exchange in information systems, in the data in the area of drug circulation, so that we could have a uniform standard that could describe all these products and that could be built into vertically integrated medical information systems at every stage of medication circulation. So I think that's one of the key components of our lives. Yes, I quite agree with you, and also highly important is the significance of a register. We have set up a register for benefits, for pharmaceutical benefits that are the medications received by patients on benefits. So this is a great assistance to regulators and forecasting the demand and also the budgets in this area. I would like to go over to our next speaker. Asgar, I'd like to welcome you. You represent the company which is manufacturing a really breakthrough drugs, gene therapeutic and other products, no doubt a leader in the pharmaceutical market, the company which is present virtually in all countries all over the world. So in connection with this, I have a question. What problems are you facing on the one hand, or what kind of foreign experience do you think is especially successful in promoting the innovation drugs? What would you like to say on this? What do you see on the whole, what the most successful practice in this area? Thank you.
So first of all, many thanks for having me. It's a great honor to be with you. So look, I'm working in pharmaceutical industry with J&J since 26 years, and I worked, I think, in at least 7 different countries. And the last assignment I had was in China. And if you see the China situation, obviously having a 1.4 billion population, having basically the same unmet medical needs we have around the world, like in Russia, like in Germany, where I'm coming from. You see, of course, that every government tries to tackle that issue. And it became incredibly accelerated, these kind of efforts during COVID-19, because what we learned during COVID-19, and China has been the first country hit by the virus, obviously, is physical supply and availability of products is critical. And we all know that supply chain got disrupted because of the COVID-19 situation. So that's a big challenge. I'm very proud to say Janssen, J&J is here since 30 years in Russia, a committed partner to the healthcare system, and we never run out of products. We bring our products in time. So no patient ever in Russia suffered that Janssen cannot provide a product. So that's an effort, I can tell you. It's not always easy. So this is one thing, physical availability. The second thing, and I think Sergey referred to that, is about acceleration of regulatory access. Look, in the past, let's say 15, 20 years ago, the number of life-saving drugs running into the regulatory process was not so high, right? So then you have a couple of products. But if we talk about cancer, chemotherapy was the standard of care. Now we talk about gene therapy, we talk about immunotherapy. So life-saving drugs. So the patient is really literally waiting because otherwise they're going to die. So in the past, in Russia, in Germany, in China, the regulatory process was rather long than short. So there was not really a differentiation between the value of a product. Is it a life-saving drug or is it just a Me Too? As an example. But what also I've seen in Russia, what I've seen in China, in these big governments, a lot of mindset change happened. And so that means now we have processes like designated breakthrough designation, like a fast track. We have parallel submission of files for GMP and clinical evaluation. We have even rolling submissions for products which proved already in phase 2, that means in an early stage of the clinical trial, they really have a huge potential for patient and tackle an unmet medical need. And regulatory bodies are starting to accelerating that. So I started my journey in China in 2016. The average time to get a product approved has been 900 days. Then I left in 21, not because of me, obviously, but it dropped down to 250 to 300 days, so in a year. So that's a huge achievement. And the biggest beneficial from that acceleration is basically the patient, because they get faster access to the products. And the last pillar of access to innovation is reimbursement. Look, we should not be naive. Pharmaceutical products have their price because of the high value, and we invest billions of US dollars in R&D. And look, this happens to every company. So I know this is a very common argument. Are they too expensive or not? But I can tell you, we invest really billions of dollars every year in R&D. So in a way, in order to keep the machine running, you need to have a fair return. So reimbursement is a critical access instrument. So because you talk not about market access, but about patient access. So how can a patient in Novosibirsk has the same access to a product like a patient in Berlin or in Beijing? And that's a critical component. And of course, there's always a debate, and we have sometimes different opinions between the government and the payer and us as an industry. But what I found in the last couple of years, we always found a good ground, a common ground. Because if we get guided by the principle patient first, we need to save lives, then we always find compromises pretty much in the middle, and everybody can live with a compromise. The world is full of compromises, actually, as we speak. So, I think, that's basically the prerequisite for access to innovation. In Russia, I have to say, look, I'm deeply impressed. I left that particular region and lost a little bit track on Russia in 2014-15, and coming back in 21-22, and I see how much change happens in Russia in terms of the regulatory access. You mentioned the circle of kindness, which is a breakthrough element in the reimbursement system. So patients who are normally, sorry to say, last in focus are becoming first in focus, which is really an amazing achievement and first in the world. I've never have seen that anywhere else. So big congratulations to you, because that's a big achievement. So a lot of things changing in Russia. Now I learned about this electronic tracking system, because the worst thing can happen. Everything is in line, regulatory process, reimbursement, and the product is physically not available, right? And that's what we have seen with COVID-19, how much people suffer if the product is not available. Look, I also represent the African continent for my company. Look, I can tell you, patients, there is no access to vaccines as we speak. So nothing, it's not available. So the world is changing. People understand more and more how relevant healthcare is, because they feel it now. Otherwise, it was always kind of cost factor, something like more for the sick people. Now everybody is affected by healthcare. unfortunately, this is perhaps the only good thing what comes out of this pandemic. So look, these three components need to fall in line, and Russia, what I see, is in a fantastic track. We are very happy to have a continuous dialogue, but I think, you and your government and also all the different partners, the patient association, you play a critical role to provide further and better access to innovation for Russian patients.
Asgar, thank you very much. And I totally agree with those three pillars that you've mentioned. And I would like to say that the patient-oriented system or patient-centered system is of great importance, and it has to do with the healthcare system, with the pharmaceutical business. We spoke it a lot with the pharmaceutical companies, and we are sure that the pharmaceutical companies also have to have the patient in the center of their attention. And the World Health Organization says that one of the most efficient models of healthcare is the patient-oriented one. And the accessibility has to do not only with the registration and with the permits for trade of this or that drug on the market, but also has to do with state guarantees, with the reimbursement. And we understand that in many cases the innovative drugs, they are expensive, they are ultra expensive sometimes, and many patients, they just cannot buy themselves such a drug, and there comes the state, and its role is very important, and I totally agree with you. We see it from within. We see that thanks to the efforts of the regulatory body, of the Ministry of Health and of the government and social structures, of the professional community, patients community, we see that we can change, and we're changing the system. We still have some time for the discussion, and I would like to ask you, Sergey, the following question and to make a comment. In your opinion, the further perfectioning of the regulatory framework, is it necessary? Because we are speaking about innovative products in the regulatory framework. Do we have a definition of those drugs, their legal status? I believe that we don't have it there. So do you think that we should go on perfectioning and the legal framework and the regional level and the federal level? What do you think about it? So, Yuriy, as to the work on the legislation, it's a continuous, coherent process, because the regulation develops with the development, with the appearance of new medications, new drugs. And as to the regulatory system, I think that the next modernization that we have to do is the fast-track system that we've mentioned before. We also have to work on the purchase scheme and probably use the risk-sharing approach, using the foundation like the good circle that you have, and we can use it to evaluate the total effect of the joint work with the producer of this or that drug. The second important element is the element of changes, deep changes that we expect to see after the coronavirus pandemic, because now we see the use of a huge amount of technologies which weren't used before, like adenovirus technology, ARN, etc. So after overcoming in the further years the pandemic, we will see another uses of those new technologies which are used now to fight the pandemic, and it will require some changes in the regulatory politics. We will see some changes in the fields of use of this or that drugs, and we will use a lot of post-marketing digital data. Alla, what do you think about the further development of this system of quality control? Because Roszdravnadzor, your entity, is the main pillar of state control in the health care field. Any comment on the new innovative drugs? What, in your opinion, requires some perfection and further elaboration? Thank you very much for your question. I believe that our future resides in the development of our laboratories. Last year, the 2021 was a harsh one, but we had a new 13 laboratory on the control of medications, which is located at Yaroslavskaya region, where we have a cluster for the fabrication of medications, and it's a new modern laboratory which has new methods of control of quality of medication, mass spectrometry, and another special devices, special equipment which we hadn't had before. So we believe that for us the future lies in the development of our laboratories. We have to have plenty of bases in Moscow, in Yaroslavl, and also in other important cities in all the provinces. We have to work in all the regions of our country to do all the selective controls, to do it fast, to do it duly, where people use this as medication. And for us, the future lies there. We have to guarantee the quality control, and the results of those quality controls, they are reflected in our electronic monitoring system. And if we identify a drug of bad quality, we can find it in the system, we can block it in the system, and it's a great advantage. We don't need to send all kind of letters, call nobody. We just block it in the system, and you cannot sell it through the drugstores, and it's very, very useful. Yes, I totally agree with you, because innovative drugs, they also need innovative control. For example, when there is a drug which is prepared for a specific patient, this targeted treatment, it's a challenge for the whole system, and you have to control it. Or when the therapy consists of one injection, of one doses, I am speaking about the gene therapy, so it requires specific approaches in the regulation of the process, and also in the mechanisms of control, because there are some drugs, some medications which just cannot be controlled by the existing systems of control. So you have to work in specialized politics in this field, and we are very grateful to you, because your body has a very important role in the control and in the modification and perfection of the control mechanism. Asgar, I would like to ask you a question also. We appreciate your opinion about the changes that you observe in Russia, but which are the main barriers that you have right now? You see right now, what do we have to change? You have 2 minutes to answer. Thank you.
Actually, it's less barrier, it's more how does the future look like for the Russian healthcare system, right? So I think now today everybody is a little bit like focusing on pandemic, managing daily operations, try to push again the economy up and running. So we all learned, I think in the last couple of years, how relevant healthcare is, not only for the particular patient, that's for sure, and this was always a given, but now I think the world society is learning that economic growth, prosperity just comes with a robust and solid healthcare system, right? So in order to ensure continuous prosperity and growth of the Russian Federation, I think it's wise to continue to invest in healthcare and not see it as a cost, because it's really an investment, right? So it's less about a particular barrier and policies. I think, you know, a good dialogue is always helpful to understand each other. I think we all want to do the same thing, serving patients in the first place. I think that's something which I feel the Russian government, all the different stakeholders are very, very open to listen and also to share their opinion. Doesn't mean they do everything we want. This would be too easy, actually, but I think to have this professional and forward-looking dialogue is good. But end of the day, it's also about budget allocation on governmental level. Russia has a very, very large government, right? It's a very powerful and strong government, and of course there are many priorities. So my pledge here is to say, look, healthcare is super relevant. I'm not in a position to say more relevant than anything else. That's not my role. But I think we learned all that something like 4% of GDP in Russia is a little bit below the OECD average. Can be done more? Yes, I think so. It is my opinion. So, but of course, this is an ongoing dialogue. Just the pledge is think about healthcare as an investment rather than a cost.
Asgar, спасибо огромное. Я хочу...
Thank you very much, Asgar. And concluding our session, I think that it's very important that we aren't speaking only about pandemics, that we are looking further, because we understand that this system needs an upgrade. And also, I totally agree with you, Asgar, because I also see that Russia is a very good example of dialogue. And our union, Patients Union, we celebrate each year an open forum with participation of Ministry of Health, of all the departments, with participation of Roszdravnadzor, of the pharmaceutical industry, and we have a roadmap in this field, and we join our efforts, and all that we are speaking about right now, we have it in this roadmap, and we're implementing it step by step. So it's a very good example of social dialogue between the regulator, public structure, and pharmaceutical industry. I am very grateful to all the participants of the discussion of today. We have to admit that the system of medicine provision is a strategic system, system of state security, and I think that pandemic proved it to us. And the lack of any group of medicines brings huge risks and tragical consequences. So there was a lot of work done, but we understand also that there is no ideal system. The situation changes, we see new challenges, and we have to work on upgrading our system, updating it, and I believe that this process is an open process, and the state listens to all the participants of the process, and that's why we will achieve success. And I believe that the medicine provision system in our country is working fine right now, but it will work better in future. So thank you very much to all of you, to all the participants. It was a honest and open discussion, and now we have to go back to our day-to-day work to solve all the issues and all the problems that we have, always thinking on the patients, because we all work here for the patients. Dear participants of the forum, here we finish our session. Thanks to all the participants, thanks to all the participants for your attention to the medical provision.